Hello everyone, in today's video we're going to be taking a look at a game called Archean that recently came out in early access on Steam. Now if you haven't seen this game yet, it is easily described, or actually maybe not easily described, as Stormworks all grown up. What is this game all about? Well, it is an engineering sandbox game, although there is an adventure component to it, where basically you design vehicles in kind of a familiar way that you probably have seen in Stormworks, only everything is done to be significantly more immersive. So let's go ahead and climb inside my little electric car here. I'm going to go ahead and my little battery master here. I'll go ahead and engage first gray drive, and we'll come sneak over here and kind of get an eye for it. There we go. Go ahead and disable that real fast. Jump on out. I never bothered to set a parking brake on that thing, so I did it. Another unique thing that Archean has is the fact that everything is ray traced graphics. There are no raster graphics here, so you can create really, really amusing and very, very interesting surfaces like the ones that you can see here. You also observe that everything is block based, and you also see that there are a bunch of wires kind of hanging out all over the different builds here because it's just the way that things are done slightly differently. You also observe that I've got stuff being built both in the water as well as underwater. You can see that there are different types of items that I have built here. You also notice that I have a little jetpack with unlimited capability. We've got everybody's favorite third person. You can see my absurdly chromed out body there, as well as some of my early creations. Now, unlike a lot of games, when you go to build things, it is nothing like you're probably used to, unless, of course, you're familiar with things like Empyrean or even Space Engineers to a lesser extent, in the fact that there is no hold my build in midair and start constructing things. Everything you build has to be built basically in the field, so to speak. Now I'm just going to walk over here and a couple different creations that I've done as I've explored these games here. And you'll notice, for example, I've got my I call this the every buggy. Pretty much everybody will build one of these at some point. And you'll notice, whoa, that torque is perfectly simulated. This is one of the first engineering sandbox games I've ever played that actually gets counter torque. Like when I accelerate, if you're wondering why my nose is lifting so high, it's actually the torque response of our lovely little motors there. Another thing that I think is so interesting is you can see as my front wheels lift off the ground as I can't steer. Now, if I let go, you notice this little light that comes on. We're actually getting regenerative braking, something that people in other games have tried to do, and it's different. You also notice I got this lovely flight instrument here, which is a kind of built in and all those other kind of components. So again, come to a pause here, again, giving you a general idea of sort of what it is. Now, when you're in adventure mode in this game, one of the things that's very, very different is the fact that you're going to be doing all sorts of mining. You can actually, these little rocks you see everywhere, you can run around and actually pick those rocks up. And of course, with this one, you can have all sorts of different technology. Now, what I really appreciate about builds like this, oh no, I let the battery die. Now I can't get inside. That's okay. We have a little drone mode that we can actually float into it like this. And you can see that there seems to be this entangly of wires that I've not seen before in other games. For those of you familiar with industrial craft and stuff like that, or even Stationeers, for those of you who know that game as well, you can see the general vibe of just how absolutely chaotic this can possibly go. You can see we completely discharged that battery, and that's why, of course, we're in creative mode, by the way. That is why my door didn't open there. Kind of funny. But one of the things that's so fascinating with this is all the different bits and bobs that you see here were all things that we just placed down for the purposes of basically making this amazing little machinery here. I can climb in here. I've got a little handle that works kind of intuitively. You actually hold down a key in order to move this. You can see I've got some displays. These are actually all dashboard objects. I've got a ton of instrumentation, little labels in here. I can see the fact that my battery is, that probably explains why it wasn't running so well. And what's so crazy about all of this is this all works. For example, I have my little submarine here. I'll come float over in here. And whoa! Oops. If you don't massively overshoot the submarine here, you can also see it's got this lovely little kind of chromed out side look to it to make it a little bit nicer. And again, I'm not going to pretend I'm any good at this game or anything like that. It's just to give you an idea of the different stuff that you can do. But like, for example, my submarine here, you can see it's all electric because there are no gas engines. This entire game of Archean, as a matter of fact, takes place 3 billion years in the past Earth. So we don't even really have oxygen in the atmosphere. But one of the things that's so fascinating is how everything just kind of works. You'll see, for example, that I've got like big tanks here, and I've got little turbo pumps that are kind of ready to rock. And basically, I can go ahead and control the depth that I wish to do just by running over here and running some software. Now, the interesting thing about software in this game is there's a significant programming component to it. It doesn't mean you have to program anything. It just means that you have to be mindful of it. For example, my lovely little submarine here is actually 2 different computers. One computer handles basically the purpose purposes of holding depth. And a second computer actually handles basically deciding direction and stuff like that. And when I come down here, you'll actually see, for those of you who are network fans, I have a router here on the floor. And this router basically allows me to give items a name and then connect it mechanically, basically through all my little cords over here. You can see I have another router down here on the floor. You can see I have another router over down here, all for the purposes of connecting to the computer so it can actually run the different components that I have on here. Now, the cool thing here is I can actually, you'll get a kick out of this. If I press the reboot button, for example, you'll see that it kind of kicks in and says, what operating system would you like to run? And again, I wrote my operating system. I pressed that. It tells me what the battery is. You can see it ticking away. But the cool thing is I can press F like this, and it brings up a little display to show me like what's going on. Again, the OS for this one is relatively simple. Now, one of the things I really appreciate about this game is I can actually come in here and walk around with this and make changes to it if I want to do things. For example, this isn't linked to any specific screen, so I can't show you any of those components, but you can see how it's written in its own. It's called Xenon code. Now, the cool thing is if I go over here, for example, to my lovely little guy here, you can see this is a substantially greater amount of programming to get all these instruments working and like be able to set up the PID controller. This is all done manually. Now, when people see that, of course, they're immediately like, whoa, stop the video. I think I'm done with this game, kind of a thing. But it doesn't have to be like that. And I will show you exactly what I mean. Let's say we want to build ourselves a really, really basic car. And by I mean basic, I mean like extra basic. So what we do is we actually have different tools you can see down there in the toolbar in the bottom. For example, I brought up my little basically screw gun here. And if I want to build something, it actually tells you what to do in the upper right corner. All I have to do is hold mouse left until it gets bright, and I let go. Thunk. And there it is. You can see there's my build. Not a lot. One thing I'll do is I'll press V on the build, and I can actually come in here and it tells me things like its mass. And if you flip it upside down, it'll let you do that. And if I just want to quickly build a car, I could just go here and build two of these frames together like this. And what I'll do now is I'll press and hold the C key, and I've got myself a lovely little wall. You can see here in the middle, I can actually change the components. We're going to go with aluminum because aluminium is awesome. Go ahead and drop myself some of that. And this is where it kind of gets cool, is everything is based basically on quick mouse actions. For example, if I go back to the C page, go back to frames, you'll notice if I right click and hold, it kind of highlights it and says, did you want to delete this? But I can actually hold down shift, and it's context smart to know, no, I didn't want to actually delete the frame. I just want to delete these little pipes here, which makes it really, really quick and easy to basically construct things. Now you're looking here going, this is not much of a car. Can you make this slightly one better? Yeah. So press C again. You can bring up the cube mode. Again, I can pick my material. I'm going to stick to aluminum here. I'm going to go ahead and, again, one of the things I love is, for those of you familiar with Stormworks, it's click, 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 click. We don't do that here. So we click and drag. But watch this. I can actually roll my mouse button and go ahead and change the height of things as well as I'm building. So if I wanted to, I could do one of these like that. Now, if I were being really, really goofy here, you'll notice there's other shapes. Now, for those of you, again, our Stormworks folks are people who used to block building programs. You probably have seen this kind of action where basically you're going to sit here and drag across like that, and then you're going to have to come down here and you're going to have to flip it upside down. I actually switch to drone mode. But one of the cool things is it's context smart. So if I press the shift key, you'll actually notice it assumes that's what I want it to do to basically continue it. So in that purpose, I can actually come all the way down here like that and finish that just like that. Now, the cool thing is if I hold right click, I can now click, 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 and reduce all of that. Now, if I wanted that to be solid, I could do that too. So, for example, if I drag my mouse up and go like that, it gives you a little detailed display on the bottom, by the way. You can now see just how darn fast I can build things now. Now, if I wanted to be one of those people who are like, oh, I'm going to get fancy here, I can build myself a corner just by dragging, roll my mouse wheel like that. Oh, look at that. Look at that. That took seconds to produce. That's one of the really, really slick things about this. But like I said, we're just keeping it simple for the purpose of letting you know what you're getting into if you're interested in this game. So I'll go ahead and keep it real simple here. I'm just going to do one of these little actions here. We're going to go ahead and attach some components to it. Again, I'm in creative mode, so I'll press the tab key. It gives me some wheels. You'll notice there's not a lot of components yet. That's perfectly fine. That doesn't bother me or anything. So I can choose how high I'm going to put it. I'm actually just going to pop it right there like that. I'll go bring up my wheel again. We're going to go stick it right here. You can see that everything happens real time. Nothing's frozen. And of course, I'll come down here and go ahead and tap that wheel right there, just like that. So you can see we've got our 4 wheels ready to go. Now, one of the things I really love with this is at any point I can come up to a wheel and I can press V on it, and you can actually bring up details as far as the physics of it. I can change how tight the suspension is if I want to make it a little bit tighter. If I want to type in a value directly, you can actually double click it and give it value. You can change its grip if you want to make a ridiculously like a wall climber or something. But one of the things I love to do here, and this is what I really, really like about this, is I can come in here and I can name this. So I can do something like wheel front right. My Python is showing here because this is technically camel case of a game, but this would be rear right, and this of course would be wheel rear left. Now the wild thing here is all of those wheels have their own names. So if I refer to them in code or in the block-based programming, which I'll show you in a moment, I can just grab them by name, which makes it much easier if you have something with thousands of components, like our big submarine over here. And by the way, the performance on this game, if you have an RTX card, which is required, by the way, is fabulous. Like I'll get 700 frames per second with 15 vehicles going until you turn on a lamp, that is, that it slows down. But anyway, we're building a really bad car here. So let's go ahead and get everything set. We're going to need electricity here. So I'm going to go ahead and keep it simple. We'll go with a 2 battery setup, making it easy. I'm just going to click and just like that kind of a thing. One of the things I usually do, and again, I could get into greater detail with videos later on, is I always try to leave myself pretty much even space just for symmetry purposes. Now, we have an interesting problem here. And this is one of the things I really like about this, is we want to make sure we connect both of these wheels. So we're going to all-wheel drive. And basically all these wheels are going to be connected to this battery here. So you'll notice there's these little connections. And when I switch to my wire down here at the bottom, this is high voltage wire. Notice it's color-coded for your convenience. It actually shows me what hole it's going to be coming out of. So now if I click on this, you'll notice that I get this little wire here. And what's so wild about this is cable management is now a thing. Now I could come over here to the wheel and just hold my mouse over it, and it generates a wire that looks like that. Now it's like, okay, so I can come over here, hold down right click, left, go ahead and left click on it. I can come down here again. I could use my mouse wheel to adjust the pathfinding here, and you can see it gives me this wire instead, which is hideous and awful. But instead, check this out. I can actually click on the wire, pick another spot. You can get really fun with this. For example, maybe I want it to come here. Maybe I want it to go through. Now, if I actually would click here, you'll notice I can actually cable manage in this game, like really, really properly here. Now, if I were to come over here, for example, let's do the same thing. Again, if I go direct, we get something that looks like this. That's just hideous. So instead, what I'll do is I'll do the best I can to just kind of cable manage through the ground there. And you can see, yes, you can go through objects, which is kind of convenient. And again, some people get very, very serious with the way they manage cables in this program. And there are other ways to do this. One of the things you'll notice if you look real quickly here is we actually have a low voltage and a high voltage input here. We're going to be stupid here and go with the high voltage option because reasons. One of the cool things in creative mode too is if you hold your mouse over this and press V, you can actually recharge or discharge it if you want to be that kind of a person. So I'm going to go back down here. Again, we're all creative mode here, so I can just press the reset button at the top to put everything back the way I want. Grab myself a pilot seat. Again, for those of you familiar with all these building games, you've seen a million pilot seats before. I'm going to go ahead and slam that down right there. Oh my gosh, this vehicle is going to be impossible to operate. It's just going to be too light. Oh my gosh, it's only about 1,000 kilograms, about a ton, which is very light. So what I'm going to do now is build myself a little control panel. Like I said, not going too hard here. Go like this, and we'll grab ourselves a nav instrument, which I don't love the nav instrument. I'd rather build my own, and I've got a lot of experience with it, so it's not too bad. But you can see we can come in here and basically stick this thing like that. We can roll the mouse to change its orientation. This is a little goofy because it's like kind of like right in my lap. So if we want to delete this is kind of different too. You have to actually select the crowbar tool and actually click on it to delete it. But again, you can see just how quickly I can rapidly prototype things without like getting stuck with the minutia. One thing that's really fun too is if you notice here, I can't quite center this. If I hold X, it gives me a different grid setting, so I can actually get more precision if that's something that I desire. You'll also probably notice there was no symmetry with any of my parts. Parts do not symmetrize. That's a new word for you. But anyway, I've got my big old screen. You'll notice here that it is off, but you'll also observe that it's got little kind of connections right here. It needs some power. You'll notice it takes this little low voltage connection here. Now, there's a couple things we could do with that. One thing we could do, of course, is we could grab ourselves a low voltage battery, which is probably what I'm going to do here. I can go like that. Again, different wire, and ew, ugly. Let's see if I can make that a little bit neater. Do one of these. Not winning any awards with that cabling, but it's good enough. But one of the cool things now is at least it has power. If I come over here and press the F key, which is the use key, like we could see we're doing 0 meters a second. We could see we're about 3 meters up. This one's actually pretty cool because you'll notice it's got a little data port here. Kind of wish these were a little more obvious data ports, but I'm not complaining in the slightest. But you can see that's just kind of handy. Now we have to get this thing moving. And what you saw a few minutes ago when I was doing kind of that initial intro is just how complicated stuff can get on board of these particular items. But you don't have to do any of that. And let me show you what I mean here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and grab myself a computer. There's a couple computers. There's the mini computer, and then there's like the computer. I'm going to grab a mini computer, but watch this. This thing's this little tiny guy like this, and I love to put these things on the floor. Now, the nice thing is we already have a battery, so I'm just going to actually slip this right alongside on the floor next to the battery. And the reason I'm doing that, of course, is I can just go boop, just like that, and I can plug it in. Now, what's so wild here is you'll notice it's got all these little kind of connections. You see why the router is so important. But what I can do is mechanically, or I should say electrically, connect these items together. So for example, on port 0 here, I can actually, we'll be careful. I'll go ahead and grab one of the ports on this side, port 11. I can connect it to my chair like that. I can grab port 0 and I can slap it into my wheels. Welcome back to cable management. There we go. That looks good to me. I'll go ahead and click on this one. We'll be somewhat nice with the cable management here. That's a little better. And of course, now you're saying, does it matter what hole you plug it into? That's up to you. You can press Z, by the way, if you need to zoom in at any time, which I think is awesome. Every game needs that button. I remember back when I was playing Tribes back in middle school, we had a zoom key, and it was fantastic. You could hit it anytime, anywhere. Good stuff. So I'm going to come back here, and yes, the batteries connect too if I want to read up how much electricity they're using and all that other good stuff. So you can see we're all nice and connected there. My wheel is connected to, actually all 4 of my wheels are connected to my chair. I'm not going to worry about the batteries or anything. That's for another day. But now check this out. If I come down here to my code, I can actually press it. And now it's looking for, I pressed F, by the way. Now, if I open this up a little bit wider, I love doing this. I can actually get in the seat while I'm coding, which is just nice, right? So I can come in here, create a new program. It's going to say, what would you like to call it? I always call them OS, unless it's something else. And you'll notice here that it's a block-based programming language. It isn't that big, nasty, complicated thing that you saw a few minutes ago. I can actually come in here and delete all this. I can right-click if I want to add something. So you can see I've got all my wheels. I also have my pilot seat, which is what I want to use here. And of course, we can keep it nice and simple. I can grab backwards and forwards as my output. And for those of you, again, familiar with Stormworks, you've done stuff like this already. Now, if I come over to output, you can see that I have a wheel. I can go down to output. You can see my other wheel. Again, output, so you can see I've got my other wheel. I think you can see where we're going with this. Output, we've got our final wheel, and there's our wheels. Now, you'll probably be sitting here going, I thought you named those wheels. But what you'll notice instead is you've got those little numbers at the top that are basically being like, yo, this is the wheel that we have. This is output 1, output 2, stuff like that. Now, what I could do here is I could just come in here and connect each one of these to my acceleration. Now, the reason this is so handy is I can just go on and grab it like this and good to go. Now, the crazy thing is if I come up here and press save all, if I press forward, whoa, you'll notice that we basically do a power donut. And the reason it does that is because my 2 right wheels are obviously facing the opposite direction. So you can see that's backwards. But if I wanted to adjust that, of course, we'd have to identify which one is our wheels. Now, if you remember a minute ago, I took all that time to get all that stuff up. Oh, I don't want to print any numbers. That's nice to do, by the way. But the cool thing here is if I go by alias, remember how I did a wheel, let's see here, wheel underscore, what I said, front left, I think. And the reason, we can check that. This is what I love. You can actually grab this, move it out of the way. Just move your mouse and point at it. And I can see I called it wheel underscore front left. And I can see here wheel underscore front left. Fantastic. So again, I can come out here back to output and I can do a wheel underscore front right. And I could basically name all my wheels kind of coming down here and link all the different components that I need if I were using a router. But what you'll see here is my 2 wheels are working perfectly up in the front because I've just named them. Now, I love this because I can actually come in here and do negative and connect that like this, connect this like this. Remember, this is my front right. Now, if I press forward, whoa, don't forget to save, forward. You can see I can actually go. Now, this is what I love about this is that they make it that easy to do. Now, I can come back in here again. I can do via alias. And again, if I had routers and stuff, I could get pretty complicated like that. By alias, we'll do wheel rear left. And of course, we could do wheel rear right, just like that. Make it all nice and pretty like that. Let's see, my my left side does not require negation. My right side does require negation. Control S, forward. Oh, yeah, now we're moving. Oh, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Oh, yeah, that's good stuff. Nice. So you can see I actually have almost a working buggy in about 3 minutes, which is amazing. Notice we have no brakes or anything like that. We'd have to program all that, but we'll get there. We'll get them not worried about it. So the other thing we can do too is you'll notice that it has the option to actually do channels. Now what I want to do is I actually want to add a channel here. Now the channels are a little complicated. They're basically different aspects of an input. And if you remember, I want to be able to steer. So if I wanted to, I could get myself another one of these pilot seats and design it with left and right, which is A and D. Now, if I shove this into channel 1, which is the steering channel, what that will give me the ability to do is to actually steer. And actually, if you look, if I go right, you can see it goes to the right, you can see left goes to the left. So if I actually were to accelerate, I now have a working buggy, which is it's a little fast, not gonna lie, not gonna lie. I love you can press the Alt key at any time. There's kind of like clicking, like if I want to press escape, I can go ahead and hide my code. If I want to go back to my code, I can actually come down to it. But you can see with just a few clicks and using that block-based code, that's all it takes to build something simple like this. Now, it's not the world's fanciest nor the most responsive or anything like that. And my braking, by the way, is just jamming my motors basically massively into reverse, which changes it. Now you're starting to get a pretty good idea of kind of what this game is about, and you can kind of see my earlier generations of different vehicles and stuff like that. But where it starts to get interesting is when you really, really want to set up electrical systems that are a little more complicated. You can see that you can use label tools to basically define your own labels like that. You know, for example, if I want to turn on my HV and go ahead and turn my lights, I could turn my lights on. You can see my little battery setup on the roof. You can see I have a pretty large little electrical setup just for the purposes, and my little beacon there, just trying to capture some power to be able to charge things. Remember, we don't have gasoline here or anything like that. You know, I've got my other little buggy. You can see kind of the earlier versions. And one really cool thing with the code that I did not mention, let me go float back over to this one, is all the code is interchangeable between the two different modes. So if I actually came over here and pressed code, I can actually switch to the code, and then I could switch back to the nodes if I wanted to see how the actual code compares between the two different systems. And it makes it much, much easier to sort of learn everything directly. But where it starts to get complicated is you start getting things like airplanes. And again, you'll notice I have no specific aerodynamic parts with the exception of my little ailerons here. But with this aircraft itself, you know, I've got my little charge switch and everything like that. You can see I've got my little routers because I have so many flight controls. But coming through this, you can see it's just a couple batteries kind of chilling in the back. You can also see I have things like electrical junctions for the purposes of being able to distribute the power. But one of the cool things is, and now this is where I really have fun, is you can actually make your own digital displays using the code built in. Now, the code for this one actually stored in the floor. It's got a little bit of code built into it, but what's so fascinating about it is just the way that I have the ability to basically adjust these values. You know, if I want to go full power, I can just jam on it like that, and off we go, kind of a thing. And you can see my absolutely terrible coding job and not the world's greatest aircraft. You know, got a little battery and everything like that. And what's so cool is everything is designed basically out of the box to be completely flexible. You know, at any point, I could just sit here and say, I just want to build something. You come over here, grab a frame, click like that, let go, and bam, I'm on my way as far as a build goes. Another cool thing that you probably didn't know or were curious about in this game is the fact that we actually have proper orbital dynamics in this game. Now, you'll see the moon over there is actually substantially closer than it would normally be, but you can literally fly to the moon. Yeah, there are rockets in this game. Now let's go ahead and grab that blueprint tool, something we haven't played with yet. Go toss that into 9. Now if I sit here and right click, I've got a bunch of weird random stuff in here. Like you could see a crane, because again, there's no like pick something up and walk away with it. Everything's too heavy for you. You see all my boats and my cars and stuff like that. Mining ugly thing, I love this. But like it's just incredible. Like for example, if I were to spawn in my little kind of rocket test pad here, you can see that everything is done with correctly mixing. We have an H2 tank, we have an O2 tank. You can see that it requires an igniter. Everything has to be carefully pumped. So we have different pressurization. I can see that I'm out of H2. Go ahead and fill this one up real quick. Come over here and fill that one up real quick. Got my little throttle. Now, if you listen, did you hear the little click, click? That was ignition. And you can see we've got a little rocket motor there. It starts to get a little hot. This might deafen you, but you can actually hear the sound of the turbo pumps actually running it. And the temperature will change based on the fuel flow. Now, the reason that's so darn cool is you have to actually correctly mix your own fuels, correctly pressurize it in order to get any rocket fuel out of it. Now, when you do things like that, again, this is just giving you an idea of what you're getting into if you pursue this game. Swinging down here, where is my lovely little rocket plane here? Bad plane. I like how I named everything bad, 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 bad. It's just to give you an idea of how not good I am at this one. There is basic jets. This is quite an embarrassment for all jet kind. But it also demonstrates just how incredibly effective some of these are. Again, remember, we're dealing with things that do not have jet engines here because we don't have the capability to. There's no oxygen in the atmosphere, so we're kind of stuck on our own. That's enough. Going up. But if you wanted to do something like build yourself a rocket plane like this one, you could just basically point up and just go. Now, if I were to allow this to kind of run for a few minutes here, I could easily basically climb right up into the thin part of the atmosphere and enjoy my next little ride up. You can see I'm actually still picking up speed here, and there's going to be Mach 1. And one of the cool things, too, is yes, my head is actually sticking out the top of this thing. You can see that angry jet engine with all my terrible piping basically chilling there. But just like I was mentioning, orbital mechanics are simulated. If you can get yourself up to 7.8 kilometers a second, you could basically fly around in orbit. I've actually watched people in multiplayer sort of build things in orbit and like build satellites and space stations and do dockings and all sorts of stuff. You can actually take this display right here, and if I press F on it, you can actually see your current orbit and kind of all the details here. Obviously, my periapsis is going to be pretty darn low. Of course, one of the other problems with this particular aircraft, more so than some other aircraft that you've seen, is rocket-based. So our fuel economy ain't great. So I'm going to run out of gas long before I get where I need to go here. So I'm just going to flip myself over. Again, there's no teleporting or anything like that. If I want to get back to base, I have to actually find my way how to get back to base. You'll notice how much quieter it gets up at this altitude as we're just kind of chilling. But it's all there, every little detail. And you can actually see a little Ismith is basically chilling over there on the right as we're just ripping. Yeah, I didn't bother making a retractable landing gear or anything like that because, again, just to give you an idea. So as you can see, this is a very, very neat game. It is definitely alpha is kind of my best description for it as far as a lot of things goes. Performance is incredible if you have an RTX card. If you're an AMD, I believe there is a workaround that allows you to still be able to play this game. If you're not on an RTX card, you're not going to be able to play, unfortunately, which is kind of a disappointment. There is some rumors that they're going to be changing some of those things around. Like I said, I'm not 100% sure. I'm not the developer. There's a bunch of mechanical systems that they're basically promising to kind of give us later on, which I'm pretty excited about because giving us things like winches, having pistons, items like that would really, really improve our flexibility as far as a lot of operational things goes. But other than that, pretty cool game. I'll keep an eye on it. Like I said, it's on Steam right now. The developers seems to be fairly active as of August of 2024. It's cool stuff. Enjoy.